In 2026, Microsoft Secure Boot signing certificates will expire. Now, your devices won't stop booting, Windows will load, and users won't notice a thing. But that's exactly why this is so dangerous. Because the absence of failure is not the absence of risk. And by the time the gap becomes visible, fixing it at a scale is completely a different problem. So in this video, let me walk you through what's actually happening, why it matters more than it looks, and what you should be doing about it right now. Let's jump in. Now, since the early days of UEFI Secure Boot, Microsoft 2011 certificate authorities have been the root of trust for virtually every modern Windows PC. They're the foundation that decides which code is allowed to run before your operating system even loads. Now, these certificates are reaching end of life, and it's happening in two stages. So in June 2026, the Microsoft UEFI CA 2011 Expire, and in October 2026, the Microsoft Windows Production PCA 2011 certificates follows. So Microsoft has introduced replacement 2023 signing certificates and has been staging updates so the new certificates land on devices before the old ones expire. Now, during this transition, boot components are dual sign for compatibility. But here's the critical distinction. This is not a standard Windows cumulative update. Regular updates operate within the OS layer. The transition affects firmware-level trust anchors, the layer beneath the operating system that validates everything above it. So depending on your hardware and firmware versions, this may require an OEM-specific firmware update on top of the OS patches, and it intersects with BitLocker in ways that standard updates just don't. This is firmware lifecycle management. Treat it accordingly. So why it matters more than it looks. Here's the scenario that should keep you up at night. A device running 2011 certificates looks and operates identically to the one running in 2023 certificates. Same boot, same performance, same user experience, until it doesn't. As Microsoft phases out dual signing and moves fully to the 2023 certificates, devices that haven't transitioned will progressively lose the ability to accept the new boot chain protections. New boot manager versions, revocation list updates, secure boot policy changes, all signed exclusively with the 2023 certificates simply won't apply. So these devices will keep running, they'll keep reporting to your management tools, but they'll be silently falling behind on boot level security. Now, the practical distinction is between the availability and the integrity. A device that boots today is not necessarily a device that will remain secure or even bootable as the transition progresses. Now, let's talk about risk categories, because the first one is security exposure. Untransitioned devices will progressively fall behind on boot level protections. The trajectory is very clear, even if the timing is gradual. And the second one is compliance. No mainstream framework mandates a specific certificate generation today, but reliance on an expired certificate will face increasing scrutiny in security audits. Now, the third one is firmware support. Some older hardware may not receive the OEM firmware updates to fully support the 2023 certificates. And where devices genuinely cannot be transitioned, these become lifecycle decisions and not patching decisions. And last but the fourth one is capital planning, because devices confirmed incapable of transitioning may need accelerated replacement, which hits your hardware budgets and refresh cycles. So none of these are emergency level risks today, but all of them compound over time. And compound risk is the hardest kind to manage reactively. So the real challenge is visibility. Now, the technical steps to deploy 2023 certificates are well documented. Microsoft has published clear guidance on this. The deployment mechanism is not the bottleneck. Now, the bottleneck is knowing the state of every device in your fleet with confidence. So think about what you actually need to answer. Which devices have Secure Boot enabled? And of those, which have successfully transitioned into the 2023 certificates? Which are still running on the 2011 certificates? Which aren't Secure Boot capable at all? And which devices are simply not reporting, creating blind spots in your governance picture? Now, multiply that across multiple hardware vendors, models, firmware revisions, and management states. And some devices need OEM firmware updates, some can be updated through the Windows updates alone, and some are virtual machines that need hypervision level changes, and some devices are outside the OEM support window entirely. And here's what makes it worse, because without structured observability, you get drift, and devices that were compliant at one point silently regress, and new devices entering the fleet without proper certificate configuration. You think you're done, but the problems just keep regenerating. So this is why the Secure Boot transition is best understood as a fleet governance challenge and not a patching exercise. Now, how do you get that visibility? Full disclosure, this is where Expire fits in. Expire Analytics detects whether each Windows device in your environment is on 2011 certificates, has transitioned to the 2023, or isn't Secure Boot capable at all. The entire fleet can be queried with a single search filter. Now, that gives you fleet-wide segmentation by certificate status, hardware model, and OEM vendor in minutes. You can prioritize remediation by risk, firmware readiness, or organizational unit. More importantly, it turns certificate status into an ongoing quality metric that you observe, monitored continuously alongside the OS patch level and application health. So you're not just solving this once, you're preventing regression. This transition is not something to leave to the assumption or scattered reporting across different tools. A structured fleet-level review will give you clarity on which devices have transitioned, which are still on the legacy certificates, and where remediation or lifecycle decisions may be required. Now, if you manage more than 200 computers, sign up for the Expire health check to assess your secure boot readiness and overall firmware posture across your environment. Now, the link to the Expire Fleet health check is available in the description below. Now, to wrap things up, the Secure Boot 2011 certificates expire in 2026. Your devices will keep booting, and that's precisely the problem, because the invisible risk is the hardest risk to manage. This isn't about whether your devices boot, it's about whether your firmware trust chain remains aligned with the modern security standard, and whether you can prove it. So don't wait for a failure event, get the visibility now. Now, if you found this useful, follow us for more IT leadership content just like this, and send this to someone who should see this. And otherwise, wishing you a happy and flawless secure boot certificate transition ahead, and Expire out.